Matthew 5, verse 13. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty? It's no longer good for anything, but to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. This isn't up there yet, but I'm going to go ahead and read it. You are the light of the world. A city situated on a hill cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and puts it under a basket, but rather on a lampstand, and it gives light for all who are in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. All right, go back to verse 13. That's where we're going to start. And you can already see it on the slide where I want to put the emphasis today. So when you think about salt, salt doesn't have a to-do list, right? It doesn't have this list of ways in which it says, I am salt, and therefore I must do steps 1, 2, and 3. I must influence, I must preserve, I must enhance the flavor of this. It doesn't have to think. It doesn't have a consciousness. Salt is salt. That might seem rather obvious. That's okay if you're thinking that. It is. But why isn't it that obvious when we read the verse and start to apply it to ourselves? He says, you are the salt of the earth. Who's he talking to? He's talking to disciples. We were talking about that last week, that at the beginning of this sermon, and we're still very much at the beginning of Jesus' sermon, he's talking mainly to people who have already decided by faith to follow him. They want to be like Jesus, and that's why they're there. And so he takes them up, actually apart from the crowd at first, but the crowd eventually follows and lags behind. He takes them up so that they can learn these things about how to be like him. And so it makes sense that after he does the Beatitudes and launches into kind of the meatier parts, in a way, of this sermon, kind of gave us his foundation there with the Beatitudes, and then now sets into, okay, so how does this look? Rubber meets the road. He starts with, you are. Not you will do, not you will become, not I would like you to do these steps, and by doing these 12 steps, you will become this, this, and this. He says, you are. He speaks to these men and women who are sitting around him about their nature and about their identity. You are the salt of the earth. There's not a question. Because you believe in him, because you believe in the Father, because you believe in the Spirit, because you're trying to live to be like Jesus, you are by nature the salt of the earth. You don't have to get up in the morning and say, I got to be salt, I got to be salt, I got to be salt. You are, if you're like Jesus. Period. When you put salt in food, it changes things. When you put salt in water, it changes things. When you put salt in water, some things will live. When you put salt in water, some things will die. Fresh water and salt water are two completely different environments for life. And you make that big a difference in your world. You bring life. 2 Corinthians chapters 2 and 3 talk about that. That as we follow Christ and as he leads us in what Paul describes as a triumphal procession, he says you are the smell of life to some, and you, just by your presence, are the smell of death to some. Death because you represent Jesus. You represent truth. You represent righteousness, and you represent holiness. And to some people, that's going to be a breath of fresh air, and others are going to turn their nose up at it. But it's because of what you are in being like Jesus, your nature and your new identity in Christ. It will become natural to do that. If you're worrying about, I don't know if I'm having any influence, are you being like Jesus? And the answer is yes. Say, well, I don't see this person changing, or I don't see that person changing. That person may not be choosing to change. That does not mean that you are not having an influence. It doesn't mean that you aren't being salt and light. But he does give us a warning about whether or not we actually are. So let's go back. Verse 13 again. You are the light of the world. Or excuse me, I jumped down a verse. You are the salt of the earth. But it can happen. Salt can lose its strength. It can lose its saltiness. And if you lose your saltiness, he says, well then what good are you? In other words, if your identity is no longer a believer in God, if your identity is no longer a child of God, if your identity is no longer to have the character and the heart and the hands of service of Jesus, he says, then what good are you in that moment? It's a tough question, isn't it? Because we don't really want to ask ourselves that. If I'm really not living like that, then Jesus says, well, then maybe then in that moment, I'm not the influence I should be. I'm not useful in the hands of God in that moment. But that's a choice, okay? That's a choice. If we give up that part of our nature as children of God, that's a choice. It certainly wasn't a work of God. So he says, at that point, you're not good for anything but to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. Sometimes this is why I want us to focus on the R. Sometimes we focus so much on the how we do something, the to-do list, that we reduce what we are as Christians and what we are as disciples down to these little, sometimes minimum requirement lists. Did I go to church enough? Did I serve people in some event enough? Was I nice in public enough? 15 minutes. I don't know what your limit is. Was I nice enough? Did I say enough? Did I do enough? And that becomes our identity. That can become depressing. That's legalism, basically. And that can become very depressing, and it can become a form of slavery in a way. Because then it's all based on our performance. And while it sounds appealing because, well, if it's a minimum requirement list, okay, well, I did my 5 things, now I can go be me. That's when we know that we're actually not a disciple of Jesus, even if we did a long list. Because if we think if I can go be me outside of being a disciple, then I never really was one. That's what he's getting at. This has to be who you are, your nature, and come from within. Salt is salt. Salt doesn't have to get up and say, today I'll be salt. It is salt. A disciple of Jesus doesn't get up this morning and say, I think today I'll be a disciple. You made that commitment. When you went in the water and when he raised you back to a new life, you became salt. Keep your saltiness, is what he's saying. Keep your character strong. Keep the foundation of faith within you strong. You'll have an influence. But if you let that fade, if you let that die out, or if you reduce it to a list of methods, a list of things to do, that'll die. I'll give you some examples of some things that have died, methods and things that have died. These are it's a goofy list. It's a weird little list, but it's not very long, so you don't worry about it. First, I want to know who here, show of hands. I don't do a show of hands very often, but I'm curious. Who here knows how to use this? Y'all old? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, but somebody was thinking it. I know how to use it. I own 3 of these. They're not plugged in, but I own 3. Anybody still have one of these plugged in? You do? Is it rotary? Is it actually rotary? You're a good man. Who else was back there? And Ronnie. Okay, that was Dayton and Ronnie. Okay, now we know who to go to if everything just falls apart and the towers all go out. We got 2 phones right over there. Okay, I own again 3 phones like this, but I don't actually have a landline account. So you can plug it in the wall, but it's dead. You get my point? What good is my phone? If you know how to do this and you don't have one, well, that's just pointless. But if you own one of these like I do, and you go to plug it into the wall and there's no signal, what good is that? It's no good, is it? It looks like a phone. You call it a phone. You tell your grandkids, this is a phone. And they're trying to figure out how to text, like how does that work? There's some great videos on the internet of teenagers trying. Have y'all ever used one of these? No? We should make one of y'all. Just do that right there. Ellie, have you ever done that? You have? Well, that's because you live in, yeah, it probably made you. Anyway, try it, Anyway, it's simple to use, but if you don't know what to do with it, it's no good. This is like salt that's lost its saltiness when you can't even plug it into the wall anymore and there's no dial tone. If my way of living as a disciple of Jesus was superficial, it was methods, it was things I'm supposed to do, then as things change around me and as I need to reach people, listen, if you grew up with a rotary phone, this is the truth. If you grew up with a rotary phone, no matter what age you are, I grew up with rotary phones. I remember the switchover. You do not live in the same world that you lived in then. True or false? I mean, it's not the same world. It is not. And if you don't believe me, go help my wife teach second grade for a day and see if it looks like the same world. I guarantee you, Mrs. Jackson and Mrs. Jacoby and Mrs. Bible would not recognize the things that are in the world today that compared to what they were and what would that be, like 1977, 1978. It's a different world. You can't go to my house and pick up one of these and text somebody. That's not going to work. And in fact, if I had a landline, the last landline I had, you had to use your cell phone to imitate a push-button dial tone phone into the handset so it could dial anything, because the landline couldn't read the click, 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 click of the rotary phone anymore for that phone company. It was irrelevant. What's the word we use for that kind of technology? Obsolete, right? Obsolete. What if a Christian is only a Christian by methods and traditions and particular list of actions that they grew up with? How are they going to have an influence on a world that no longer exists? How are they going to influence a new world in which people think very, very differently and approach life from a completely different worldview? Salt will lose its saltiness. No matter how good the intentions, salt will lose its saltiness. So as disciples, we need to make sure that our way of reaching the world is not built on particular time-centered actions, like a certain way of spreading the gospel or a certain way of worshiping, maybe even choosing certain sets of songs. We try here at this congregation to really mix the generations of songs because we're a mixed generation room, right? We don't just do one set of songs, because you're reaching different hearts and you're reaching different generations. And if churches that refuse to do that end up dying out, because they can speak well to one, but they've mistaken that method as being salt. Being salt is being a disciple of Jesus, and that means you will change your methods as you try to minister to people. So you might have to learn how to. I was actually, believe it or not, I love gadgets, but I was resistant to texting back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I was resistant. For one, pushing that button 4 times to get to the letter that I wanted. What is that? I felt like I was a monkey in a cage being trained for an experiment. What do I need to do that for? Just pick up the phone and call somebody already, right? Different generations. Under a certain age, and it's up into the 40s now, under a certain age, people don't want you calling unless they were expecting the call. You have to text and say, is this a good time to call? That's really weird, but if that's the etiquette, that's fine. It's just a different time. Don't get all, Roddy, fable her. It's just a different generation. They think differently, they interact differently, and that's fine, okay? It's fine. Some of you grew up on a can and a couple of cans and a string, right? Your grandparents thought you ought to put that thing down, okay? They're on that can and string all day long. I don't know. I guess that's what they were doing. It's what it was on the Little Rascals. I don't know. That's the only way I know. I tried it, and it didn't work for me. But you had your thing, they have theirs. None of that's right and wrong, as long as it's being used well. What changes whether or not it's being used well? Are you salt? What's your character? What's your heart? What's your motive? What are you doing from within? It's what's in here, right? The method will change. So you'll switch from that to a phone to, I don't know, I feel like this is going backwards. I just got one of these recently, and somebody called me and I couldn't get my phone out of my pocket fast enough, so I answered the phone on my watch, and I thought, good night, it's Dick Tracy. And half the room said, who? Right? I'm so old, I read Dick Tracy in a newspaper. And so half the room went, a what? I don't read a newspaper. I haven't bought a newspaper in 20 years. What am I doing that for? Unless somebody's in it where I want to go and get the article and the picture and all that kind of thing. But like to purposefully do that, what do they need my money for? Anyway, I don't do that. Just different things. But things become obsolete if we stubbornly say, church looks this way, being a disciple looks this way, and spreading the gospel looks this way, or worship looks this way, whichever environment we're talking about, whatever effort we're talking about. And we stubbornly decide it's a particular way to be done, not a particular truth to be told, a particular message to be given, a particular kindness to be shown. See, those things are salt being salt. But if I'm in love with the method instead, eventually I become a rotary phone in a digital world. Churches all over the country are closing because they become rotary phones in a digital world. And some of us, when the pandemic hit, some people really tried to adapt quickly and keep connections and keep people encouraged through the use of digital things. Some absolutely rejected it based on faulty political grounds. Not faulty because of the politics, faulty because that shouldn't have been what made up your mind. Faulty grounds, and you gave up opportunities to reach people. Just gave them up, shut it down. And we shouldn't have done that. At that moment, we became a rotary phone in a digital world. Who remembers what this means? Honestly, I had to look it up. And I'm old enough. When we were in New York, we had a neighbor, or we had neighbors. And the neighbors on one side were college students, university students at RPI, which is a school like MIT. It's up at that level of engineering and stuff like that. So we lived next door to the Big Bang Theory, okay? Those were, only it was an entire house full of nothing but Sheldons. I mean, that's all they had. And yeah. And it's New York. They didn't have air conditioning. They were renters. And they didn't have air conditioning, so their windows were always open during this, time of the year. And so what did I hear all summer long if I had a home office, if my home office window was open? Who knows what that was? That was this. Yeah, see, some of you are here like, I'm too old to have used AOL. That's old, okay? But I don't mean that in any bad way. That's fine. So anyway, AOL. This is not just AOL, though. This is AOL Instant Messenger, which until I was getting ready for this lesson today, I had honestly just forgotten existed. And now I hear my neighbors in my head, and the door sound when somebody enters the chat, that sort of a thing. And so you would hear that all the time. If you get onto, I don't even know if you can, but I guess if you got onto Instant Messenger, if you can, now, who else is there? And should you call the police? Who is still in there? Who's in there? I don't know. I'm not going. Probably Sheldon next door and his friends talking to the kitchen. I mean, we're probably talking to each other. Anyway, it's obsolete. It does no good. Now they got all these different other apps. If I started to list the apps that people use now, and especially when I was a kid, we used to make fun of the older preachers who would say, the young people. That was like code for, he is 6 generations ahead of us. He called us young people. So if you were going to connect with the young people through an instant messenger, I couldn't give you the list because it changes about every 6 minutes, maybe 3. I have no idea. Yesterday, I was at a Kiwanis training, and they were talking about, you ought to get on this app. By the time I got home, it was obsolete. Over. Really, I looked at it when I got home, and I went, oh, people can't still be using this. But that's what they were telling me. Who remembers this one? It's a way to communicate. It was going to change the world, revolutionize everything. We were going to be more connected. People were on there. Preachers were like, oh, we can spread the gospel here. Do y'all know what this was? Because I didn't even recognize this little icon. You don't know what it is? This is MySpace. Anybody remember MySpace? Would you admit it if you did? When MySpace was new, I logged on. I saw a couple of people that I knew on there, and I was like, what is this? And it was very customizable, more than Facebook even now is to this day, and whatever they're using post that. You could change everything. You could have your favorite song playing in the background because they hadn't gotten so greedy they cut you out of playing songs. And so you could play your favorite song in the background. So anybody who came to your MySpace, whatever they called it, your space, I guess, whenever you would go there, your song started playing, So like, if you were my mother, maybe that would be, Downtown or You Light Up My Life. I don't know. That sounds weird. But that would be on there playing. Some of you, it's probably, it's me again, Margaret. I don't know. But that's how MySpace struck me, to be honest. I thought it was all a bad Ray Stevens song, and I canceled my account within like the first week. I was like, these people are weird. And so anyway, MySpace, gone. You say, I'm going to change the world. I believe in MySpace. You can change somebody's world, I guess, but it's dead. It's gone. Let's go back further. How many of you know what that is even? Anybody know what this is? Y'all know MySpace more than you know an international mail envelope? Bunch of heathens. Now I'm worried about you. So this is an airmail envelope for when you send things overseas. And truthfully, like, I still send letters, I send cards, I do handwritten stuff, but even I don't send airmail stuff. I bought a package of envelopes a few years ago. I haven't opened it yet. They're just sitting there. Who knows even what a stamp costs for that anymore? Regular stamp is what, 73 cents? People complain about that like it's a lot of money, but then they go and get a $5 coffee. That's messed up. 73 cents, you drive across town in whatever you drive for 73 cents. That's still a bargain, folks. So, walk to the mailbox. It's good for you. But this, I think it costs now $1.70, 60 something to send a letter all the way around the world, door to door. You say, yeah, but it takes 2 weeks. Well, you walk it, Try that. Try driving, flying, canoeing, kayaking, whatever you're going to do. You can't do that for $1.50, $2. It's really a pretty good deal. But if you're really dedicated to, I will only communicate with people through my old ways. How effective is that going to be? If I sit you in a room with MySpace, AOL Instant Messenger, a rotary phone, and an airmail envelope, this one actually at least you can still do, right? But what are you going to get done? As a congregation, we should be thinking and praying about, okay, if the world has changed, what are we going to do to adapt and to reach them? You don't compromise the gospel. Salt, if it loses its saltiness, is good for what? Nothing. You don't compromise the gospel. You don't change the content of what you preach. But how you do that? Yeah, you may have to adapt every now and then. Good example, since we're looking at airmail envelope right there, would be World Bible School. World Bible School they went digital a long time ago. I was online digitally with teaching World Bible School 20 some odd years ago. They've updated that and updated that and updated that. But it's a great tool. We will be having a training this year on how to do that. Not with the envelope. I mean, you can do that if you want to. That's fine. There are people who can be reached that way, and if they can, they should be. But by and large, we should adapt, and we should embrace, and we should look for ways to share the gospel any way and every way we can. Not because we just need new ways. Change for change's sake is just a waste of time and energy. But because we are salt. It is our identity to keep chasing down the lost and sharing grace with people and having the influence we were made to have. So we'll do it different ways. Well, that's why we got a little camera stand. Ours is not the highest tech one in the world, but we're doing what we can with what we've got, and we're able to reach people that way and encourage people that way. You do what you need to do, change what you need to change, adapt what you need to adapt, and it happens on an individual level too. So you might have to change the way you go through the ruts of your daily life. You might have to get out of the rut. You might have to change a little bit of what you do and how you spend your time. But you do it because you're salt. You want to have an influence, and you want to have a reach for the gospel, and you want to be able to see people come to Christ, and you don't want to be I think the technology is cool, but you don't want to be a rotary phone in a digital world. And I'm not talking about, in this sentence, I'm not really talking about rotary or digital, am I? We don't want to be obsolete for Jesus. We want to be on fire, looking for every way we can to share the gospel of Jesus with people, because that's who we are. We are the salt of the earth. We are also the light of the world, and a city situated on a hill cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and puts it under a basket, rather on a lampstand. One of the things that's really important that we have going on right now is that we've got to replace the roof, okay? Hopefully next week they'll have an announcement for you for that and an update and all of that. But for now, we've got to fix the roof. We still lack a bit. Let me clarify. I'll give you this much in the middle of the sermon just because I think you need it. I was visiting with some folks the other day. They were talking about, the price and all of that. Folks, that is cheap for a roof. Go out and look. It is. This is a really good deal. I was sitting next to somebody the other day. They were saying, yeah, my roof was $12,000 for my house. Count how many houses just on this room. It's at least 2, just this room. And got more building going that way and more building going back that way. So kind of do the math and you figure out pretty quickly, this is really, we're being treated well. But we need to do that. Here's what we don't need to do, okay? What we don't need to do is treat our church building like a basket. We don't want to patch the basket so that we can then sit under it and never reach anybody outside it. This is all necessary and useful. It's a great tool for reaching people. We don't want our Tuesday school kids having their program in here with the roof wide open to the sky and shingles falling on their head, right? That's not what we want. So there's responsibilities we have. But we also don't want to only ever be Christians under this roof, because it's not what we do. It has to be who we are. Everywhere that we are, everywhere that we go, every day, all the time, that we're Jesus people. You are the light of the world. In the same way, in verse 16, he says, this is one of my favorite passages, period, and in the Sermon on the Mount. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. 2 really major things here. Shine your light. Not the way the world does, There was an old Mad TV. Some of you remember Mad, the magazine. Mad TV. There was an old Mad TV sketch where there was this guy who was about the height and build of Dan Mazie, and I wish he was here to give us a demonstration. But he was about the height and build of Dan Mazie, but he was playing a second grader with some attention issues, right? And this character was all the time just making random spastic movements, okay? These aren't spastic enough. Both my arms are going kind of the same way. He was asymmetrical, okay? And he would just go out there and go, look what I can do, look what I can do, like that. And just drive people crazy. And the teacher would have to put a rope. Have any of you ever had this happen in class? I had a friend named Kevin Portier, and when he was just like this. And one day, one of our substitute teachers said, Kevin, I need you to take off your belts. And we all went, oh, lawsuit, And we knew that much even in the 70s. And she's like, take off your belt. We thought, he is going down. I mean, none of us stood up to defend him because, we were wondering, we're wide-eyed in shock. And she walks over and she takes his belt. Couldn't do this today, okay? She takes his belt and she puts his belt on around him. And she said, okay, I want you to buckle your belt. She didn't want it to be too tight. She wasn't being mean. And he put it around the back of his chair so that he was buckled into his chair. And so he tightened his belt. And she said, Kevin, you're not allowed to take your belt off all day. And so here's Kevin. I know this is not what I expected. I fully expected Kevin to be walking around all over the place, bouncing with a chair on him, all day long. But he didn't. He stayed in his chair. He did his work. The next morning, Kevin comes in and says to the teacher, ma'am, is it all right if I put my belt on around my chair? Because that really helped. And it changed his behavior in the classroom. And then we were all sitting there going, no way. That was amazing. And this guy would sometimes juggle in the middle of class, just right there in the middle of class. He was something. But it helped him. Our world is kind of like that. Look what I can do. Look what I can And so when they say, let your light shine, it's kind of like Kevin putting on a show in the middle of a classroom. If we're Christians that make it about us and make letting your light shine be about putting a spotlight on ourselves, we're really just that annoying kid disrupting the classroom, because we're not really doing what we were made to do. We're making it about us. He says, let your light so shine before men. How? In the good things that you're doing. In the way that your salt is coming out of your character and into your deeds. In the way that you are shining a light to the world around you. Kindness, love, holiness, truth, service. Let your light so shine among men that they praise your Father who is in heaven. And that's the real point, isn't it? That the praise doesn't come to us. It's not, look what I can do. It's, look what a great God we have. So one of the best ways of evangelism is simply this. Come and see. Come and see what the Lord is doing. Come and see what God has done. Pointing people back, not to ourselves, but to the Father. Matthew 22 says how we make that happen. What does it mean to be salt? Actually be salt. How then does that seep out of us and change our world? How does the light break forth out of us and change our world? We know the answer. It's simple, isn't it? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and most important command. See, then when this is our goal, how we do it doesn't matter as much. We're just going to do it in the way that reaches the most people. In one day, that was a rotary phone. In another day, that was instant messenger. In another day, maybe it was MySpace. I don't know. In another day, it was mailing World Bible School. In another day, it's logging on and being a teacher to somebody who is maybe just across the state or across the world. In another day, it's bumping into a friend at the grocery store and giving them a word of encouragement, or maybe just listening. On another day, it'll be another thing. In another conversation, it'll be another approach. What will be consistent across all those days, across all those approaches, across all those methods, and across all those technologies is this. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. You're going to give them Jesus. You're going to serve and love, and be kind, and hold out the truth in a way that reaches, encourages, teaches, and draws them to Jesus. By loving God with all your heart, mind, soul, and with all your strength elsewhere in Deuteronomy, because it's the greatest and most important command. And the second is like it. You'll love your neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets depend on these two commands. And when that's who we are, not just what we do, but when that's who we are, we start to preserve what's right and holy in this world, and it needs it. They need us. And we need to be who we were created to be for them. We preserve what's right. We show people the light that leads them to the truth, that leads them to Jesus, to righteousness, to eternal life. And at the end of the day, well, then we sing our songs, new, old, and in between, to give glory to our Father who is in heaven. I would offer an invitation, but I really think what Jesus would have us do at this moment is not to have an invitation, but to send. Go. We got a Star Trek fan back in the booth today. Make it so. Go and do it. Make it the reality. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. And the world needs what you have to give in Jesus.